understood, yeah.
If there is no function called install in Samsung, though it's the same output or it shows error?
Yeah, that is a good question. Anybody can answer that? So let's say in the Samsung there was no install, right? And then you are calling like this, what will happen?
Error.
This install will say what? Undefined. Right? But since you are not, since this install is called by the context of what? iPhone, and in the iPhone it will be there, right?
Yeah, iPhone is.
iPhone having that that instance, but since you are this line as.install will break, right? But if it has the install, but this guy's iPhone does not have install, then this line will not break, and you call with this instance, and then there if you have iPhone this dot store is equal to AS, that will print AS. If you didn't have AS, let's say here you had undefined, it will print I am installing from undefined, right? So let's talk how many. I think we have covered in the later point. But basically there are two ways to change the context, right? One is call and one is apply. You know apply?
Yeah.
What is
arguments.
What is the difference?
We can pass the arguments in apply.
And here you cannot pass?
No.
Who are saying no, we cannot pass? How many of you?
He did not say that we cannot pass
Even
the
Like in the
video. Java
Actually, you was watching
fundamentals. He didn't say that you cannot apply in call, but he told that you can apply
For the
you can
apply,
pass
we can pass the
in
arguments for the apply. But
So now you know why they are used, right? At that time, did you know that this is what the use of this call and apply to change the context and blah blah?
he
No,
told,
right?
but it was a little bit confusing.
That is why I was not going that advanced concept at that time. So now you know why you need at least, right? Whenever you want to switch the context, you need it, and you can call it, right? So for example, you are writing a framework, right? In that framework, you are getting a function as an input, and you are supposed to call it. For example, I have a function called as calculator.add. So in the add function, I am doing a plus b, right? And then I want to log it before I want to call a plus b. So I can create a logger as a separate function who takes any function and just logs. So tomorrow I can have subtract, and I want to say a plus b, right? So instead of calling subtract and then writing here console.log, I am adding this. I can just call the logger first and pass my subtract function to it, and what this will do is it will do console.log, it will say calling this function, and it will actually call that function, right? And then it will say console.log calling is done. So this is just like aspect oriented programming, where you intercept the process before and then you do after something. This is very important requirement. You have action filters if you are doing .NET. Action filters are the same thing. So you have a concern like you have huge set of functions and you want to log every time beginning and end. How do? You can create a wrapper function which takes a function which will call that function, but before calling he will do some logging. So in this situation, if you are calling this function, you lose the context, because these functions are coming from, you don't know, right, which context it is coming. If I just call it, what is the context here? If I am calling a function, what is the context here? In which context you are right now? If I am just calling a function and I do not put any context here, what is the context by default? Global context, right? This is just I'm blindly I'm calling this function. So it has this, while calling this function, the function which is being called, it is called with the context of global context. It is not called with any context. If I would have here, let's say, I don't know, let's say if this subtract was and inside this I was using this dot let's say calculator version. So here this will break. Is it breaking or not here?
Yes.
Because here this is what? If you do this wrapper, after okay, you'll say okay, let me do some aspect oriented programming, I'm expert, I know design patterns, I just wrote this one fancy function, I told everyone just use my wrapper and you'll be happy. And then tomorrow you'll get a lot of emails saying that everything is breaking. What did you do? And you'll say I didn't do anything, I just did some console logging, I called your function. Right? But they will say in my function I am getting this is undefined. Sorry, calculator version is undefined. Even though I have in my class, I have already this dot calculator version, which is 23. But still my subtraction, during subtraction I cannot print it. Right? So, are you seeing this error? What is the error? The error is this function is being called but there is no context, and hence this is pointing to the global context, where in the global context calculator version is not there, because this is in this function which is calculator function. This is a calculator function, and in this calculator function you had this dot calculator version which is 23, but while calling this logger broke it. So what is the fix?
Put the context.
Put the context. How do you know context? You don't know context here, right? Because you are in the world where you have just isolated tiny logger function and you don't know in the world who are calling it, right? So you will say I cannot decide, I need the second parameter which is context. And then what you can do here?
Context.
How to call a function with changing context? So initial, now it is global context, I can change the context, right? So how do you change the context? You call the function dot
Context name.
name. I showed you, right? Dot speed dot
Call.
Call is the keyword that you can use to change the context. So function, any function has those methods, right? Every function has call and apply method. I can say function dot call, and I'll say call for this context, so that this will fix. Now they will get their own context. So when you call this logger, you will call logger dot subtract, comma, the context is calculator, CLC cal. You will pass CLC. This is the context you will pass. If you forget to pass your own context, you ruin your own self. So this is the framework you can write. So people write some common reusable code, but they forget some of the basic concept of JavaScript and they broke the entire system. So this is one way of doing it, right? Okay, say suppose I will call subtract, but is this working? Will you just call subtract or you need to pass data also? 1, 2, right? How you will now call that function with that data also? Now you solve the context. You also want to pass the subtract with value a, b, right? So you are using call and you are saying there is no way to pass the data in the call. But it is not the case, right? You can pass the data. You can pass the dot arguments. Comma separated arguments you can pass. And then here you will get a, b. That's the solution. So to always remember, context is very important, because if you are writing this, therefore we say that don't use this at all. In functional programming, they are encouraging you to do not use this. Try to avoid using this, because you do not know whether it will be pointing to my class or somebody else will hijack me, right? So do not use this. Try to reduce it. Use as much as simple functions, because this is the other thing can happen, right?
So what's the difference between call and apply?
I'm going to that one next. So now you know how to where to use this call and apply, where to use this context switch. Now you know, right? This is the practical example I gave you. If you want to write a logger for your entire project, you will get a function and you can call that function before and after, but
With a context.
without context it will break, right? So now let's see what is the difference between call and apply. So how I remember like this: A for
Apple.
array, right? A for array. So basically we are saying is, when you are calling apply, you need to pass the arguments, but pass it through
Array.
But if you are using call, you can pass the argument, but it is through C for comma separated. So basically when you use call, your arguments are going as a comma separated. When you use apply, it is going as a
Array.
array. So when you need, now you know answer. So now if you have a function called subtract, and it was taking a comma b, which one you will use?
Call.
Now you know, right? And if you have a user where you are getting a list of users,
Apply.
right? Which one you will use?
Apply.
You can use apply and entirely and pass all of the user in as a array,
The details.
right? Because you need a array. So I can say here user, and I can say dot apply,